Madison's fist came down hard on my prototype. 4 months of work. Gone. I watched custom parts scatter across the conference room floor, rolling under chairs and into corners. Parts I'd spent weeks machining in my garage after hours because company resources kept getting reallocated. "This is garbage," Madison announced, turning toward the man at the head of the table with that practiced smile I'd seen her use on every client. "We'll start fresh with a real engineering approach. My name's Marcus Rodriguez. Friends call me Mac. I'm 47, been doing mechanical engineering for over 20 years, including 3 tours with the Army Corps of Engineers overseas. I know good engineering when I see it. What just got smashed was damn good engineering." The client, David Kessler, hadn't said much during my presentation. Now he was studying the wreckage with those sharp eyes that told me he'd seen plenty of boardroom politics before. His gaze moved from the destroyed prototype to Madison's satisfied expression, then settled on me. "Can I have your contact?" he asked quietly. That caught me off guard. I fumbled for one of my personal cards, the ones I'd printed myself since Madison never bothered ordering them after my supposed promotion 6 months ago. My hands stayed steady as I handed it over. Madison's smile faltered just a bit. "David, I assure you our team will develop something much more practical. Mac's approach is," she searched for the right dismissive term, "overly complex for real-world applications." David pocketed my card without acknowledging her comment. "Thank you for your time today. I'll be in touch about next steps." As the meeting broke up, I knelt down and started gathering what I could salvage. Each piece felt like a small defeat. The titanium actuators I'd designed to work without electrical components. The mechanical feedback system that could operate in any environment. The modular frame that could be repaired with basic tools anywhere in the world. "Leave it," Madison said, standing over me once David had left. "Maintenance will handle the cleanup." I looked up at her. "These are custom parts. Parts for a project that's officially terminated," she replied, checking her watch. "The engineering committee agreed with my assessment. We're moving forward with the standard electronic framework. You never submitted my full documentation to the committee. It hit me then, the pieces falling into place. You told me the review meeting was next week." Madison shrugged. "I made an executive decision to fast-track the process. Your design was never going to meet market standards." She straightened her blazer. "Take the rest of the day. Clear your head. Tomorrow you'll join Carlos's team on the sensor calibration project. A demotion, not even disguised. Let me back up and explain how I got here. I'm a mechanical engineer specializing in industrial automation systems that work without electrical power. While everyone else was chasing smart technology and IoT solutions, I was focused on mechanical innovations that would be reliable, affordable, and accessible anywhere, especially for disabled veterans who needed equipment that wouldn't fail them. I joined Steel Tech Solutions here in Austin straight out of the military. Their mission statement talked about engineering solutions for underserved communities. Having served with guys who came home missing limbs or dealing with mobility issues, that mission meant something real to me. For 18 months, my ideas had been systematically pushed aside. Madison had arrived as our new division head and immediately made it clear she valued flashy presentations over solid engineering. She preferred solutions that looked impressive in PowerPoint slides. Sleek, connected, modern. The fact that such devices became expensive paperweights when the power went out was, in her view, an infrastructure problem, not a design problem. My mother used to tell me about my grandfather, who fixed farm equipment during the Depression with nothing but basic tools and ingenuity. "Fancy doesn't mean better, mijo," she'd say. "Simple things work when complicated things break down." I'd carried that lesson through 3 combat tours, where the difference between mechanical reliability and electronic failure could mean life or death. That philosophy didn't mesh well with Madison's vision of the future. She wanted everything connected, everything smart, everything dependent on networks and power grids that didn't exist in half the places our products were supposed to serve. The prototype she'd just destroyed represented months of solving real problems. I'd designed it after talking to wheelchair repair shops, prosthetic technicians, and VA hospitals. They all told me the same thing. Electronic devices looked great in showrooms, but became useless when batteries died, circuits fried, or software glitched. My system was different. purely mechanical, self-adjusting, maintainable with a screwdriver and some grease. It could work in a sandstorm or a blizzard, in a refugee camp or a rural clinic. It wasn't sexy, but it was bulletproof. Madison didn't see it that way. To her, mechanical meant outdated. Simple meant unsophisticated. She'd rather sell a device that impressed investors than one that actually worked where it was needed most. The worst part wasn't the destroyed prototype. I could rebuild that. The worst part was knowing she'd done it deliberately, in front of the one person who might have understood what I was trying to accomplish. David Kessler represented the largest Veterans Assistance Foundation in the country. His opinion could make or break new technology in the military assistance market. Or so I thought. 3 days after that disaster of a meeting, my cell phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mac Rodriguez speaking. "This is David Kessler. I'd like to see more of your designs." That got my attention fast. My pulse picked up. "I'm not sure how much I can share outside company channels. I understand your position," he said, "but I believe your approach has real potential. Would you be willing to meet to discuss concepts only?" We arranged to meet at a fabrication shop near the industrial district. I brought only my notebook, nothing proprietary, nothing that would violate my employment contract, just concepts I could sketch out by hand. When David arrived, he introduced himself properly. He wasn't just any potential client. He was the chairman of the largest Veterans Assistance Foundation in the country, responsible for distributing mobility aids to disabled vets across 45 countries. "Your approach solves problems we've been fighting for years," he said, examining my sketches. "Battery dependency makes our equipment useless in remote areas. Even when we provide charging stations, they're often repurposed for more immediate community needs." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Finally, someone who got it. I can't develop this properly without access to company resources. "Use our workshop," he interrupted, gesturing around us. "I'm hosting the International Veterans Technology Conference next month. Every major manufacturer and distributor will attend. I want you to demonstrate what's possible." "Madison will be there," I said. David's expression remained neutral. "Yes, your manager has been invited. Does that concern you?" It should have. But looking at the opportunity in front of me, the chance to finally show what I knew could work, something settled inside me. A calm I hadn't felt in months. Not anymore. For 3 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I worked on Carlos's team, running diagnostics and keeping my head down. Madison grew increasingly smug, thinking she'd put me in my place. At night, I rebuilt my prototype in David's workshop, making improvements I'd only dreamed of when limited by company resources. The Foundation's facilities weren't as advanced as SteelTech's, but they had something more valuable. Technicians who regularly serviced equipment returned from the field. "This joint locks up constantly," said Rodriguez, no relation, a maintenance specialist, pointing to my initial design. "Dust gets in here and jams everything." I redesigned it that night, creating a sealed system that could be cleaned with nothing more than compressed air. Each conversation taught me something new about real-world conditions my equipment would face. Carlos noticed I was tired during the day but didn't ask questions. We'd worked together before Madison arrived, and he knew better than most how my projects had been systematically killed. He covered for me when I dozed off during particularly boring calibration sessions. "You working on something?" he asked one afternoon while we were testing sensor arrays. "Maybe," I said. "Good. You've been wasted on this stuff." He gestured at the electronic components spread across our workbench. "This is junior engineer work. You should be designing, not debugging." That meant more than he probably realized. Carlos was one of the sharpest young engineers I'd worked with. Having his respect reminded me I wasn't crazy for thinking my approach had merit. The nights in David's workshop became the best part of my day. Working with my hands again, solving real problems, building something that mattered. It reminded me why I'd become an engineer in the first place. I wasn't just rebuilding my original prototype. I was creating 8 different systems addressing various automation needs. A packaging system that could handle different product sizes without reprogramming, a quality control mechanism that worked purely through mechanical tolerances, an assembly line component that could be maintained by anyone with basic tool knowledge, all functioning without electrical power, all serviceable with standard tools, all manufacturable at a fraction of normal costs. The Foundation workshop stayed busy during the day with regular maintenance operations, so I usually worked from 8 p.m. to midnight. David would stop by most evenings to check progress and discuss implementation challenges. "The military's been asking for systems like this for years," he told me one night. "Equipment that works in extreme conditions without depending on power infrastructure. Your designs could revolutionize field operations." "If they ever see production," I said, "they will, one way or another." David had connections I was just beginning to understand. Government contracts, international aid organizations, military procurement offices, the kind of network that could make or break new technology adoption. "What's Madison's background?" he asked during one of our evening discussions. "MBA from UT, couple years at a consulting firm, then straight to Steel Tech. She talks a good game about market analysis and investor relations. Engineering experience? None. But she's convinced she understands the market better than the engineers building the products." David nodded thoughtfully. "I've seen that type before. They optimize for presentation metrics instead of user outcomes." That summed it up perfectly. Madison cared about quarterly reports and board presentations. Whether our products actually worked in the field was secondary to whether they looked innovative in PowerPoint slides. The night before the conference, I stood back and looked at what I'd accomplished. 8 working prototypes, each addressing real problems I'd identified through conversations with field technicians. Not just proof of concept, actual functional equipment that could go into production immediately. "Ready for tomorrow?" David asked, stopping by for a final check. I ran my hand along the main unit, an automated assembly system that could operate in any environment, be adjusted for different products, and be fully maintained by users with minimal training. "I've been ready for 20 years, I said. "Just needed someone to see it." David smiled. "Tomorrow, a lot of people are going to see it." The conference day arrived with typical Texas weather. Storms, building on the horizon. I transported my prototypes to the convention center before dawn, each covered under waterproof tarps. I'd called in sick to work, texting Carlos that I had food poisoning. "Feel better, man," he texted back. "Don't worry about the sensor project. I've got it covered." Good people like Carlos made the workplace politics bearable. When this was over, I hoped he'd understand why I'd kept him in the dark. By noon, my display was ready but hidden behind partition walls that David had arranged. My work would stay concealed until my scheduled demonstration at 2:30. I watched through a gap as attendees filled the hall. Industry leaders, government representatives, and military procurement officers from around the world mingled between elaborate company displays. Through the crowd, I spotted Madison arriving with Steel Tech's delegation. She moved confidently between groups, shaking hands and networking. She had no idea I was there. No idea what was coming. At exactly 2:30, David stepped onto the small stage at the center of the hall. The crowd quieted as he welcomed everyone to the Foundation's annual conference. "Today is about innovation that serves real needs," he said. "Not technology for its own sake, but solutions that work everywhere from urban facilities to remote outposts." His eyes found mine across the room. "Our first demonstration embodies that philosophy. Please welcome Senior Engineer Mac Rodriguez." The partition walls pulled back as I stepped forward. Murmurs spread through the crowd as people took in the equipment arranged before them. Not as sleek as the electronic versions dominating the industry, but obviously different in design and function. I caught Madison's face in the crowd, the shock, the confusion, the dawning realization of what my presence meant. I held that look for one moment before turning to the wider audience. "These systems address different automation needs," I began, my voice steadier than expected. "But they share core principles. They function without electrical power. They can be maintained with basic tools, and they can be manufactured at 60% lower cost while increasing reliability by 300%. I moved to the first prototype, demonstrating how the mechanical system adapted automatically to different products. I invited an attendee to test it with various components we'd prepared. It can be maintained indefinitely in areas without consistent power or specialized technicians. Questions erupted from the crowd. I answered methodically, demonstrating features, explaining mechanical principles, showing maintenance procedures. Military procurement officials pushed forward with cards. A government contractor asked about immediate licensing options. "How does this handle extreme temperatures?" asked a woman from the Defense Department. "Tested from -40 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit, I replied, showing her the housing design. All mechanical tolerances account for thermal expansion. No electronics to fail. A man in a Navy uniform stepped forward. Saltwater environments designed for it. Sealed bearings, corrosion-resistant materials, field-serviceable components. I opened one of the units to show the internal design. This bearing assembly can be completely rebuilt with standard tools in under an hour. From the corner of my eye, I saw Madison trying to approach, blocked by the density of the interested crowd. Her face had shifted from shock to something more calculating. "What about production scalability?" asked someone from a manufacturing consortium. "Each unit uses standard industrial components available worldwide. No proprietary parts, no specialized manufacturing requirements. Any facility that builds farm equipment or industrial machinery can produce these systems." A colonel from Army Logistics joined the discussion. "We've been looking for solutions exactly like this. Equipment that works in forward operating bases without dependable power. When can we see field testing?" "Prototypes are ready for immediate testing," I said. "David can coordinate deployment schedules through the foundation." The crowd was eating it up. These weren't academics or investors looking for flashy presentations. These were people who actually used equipment in the field, who understood the difference between impressive and practical. As my demonstration concluded, applause filled the hall. People surged forward to examine the prototypes more closely, to leave contact information, to discuss potential applications. I noticed several people from Steel Tech watching with expressions ranging from confusion to admiration. None approached while Madison lurked nearby. As the crowd finally thinned, David approached with an older man I recognized immediately. Preston Caldwell, the founder of Steel Tech. That got my attention fast. "Impressive work," Caldwell said, running his hand along my primary prototype. "Especially interesting since your manager claimed these mechanical concepts were thoroughly explored and abandoned as impractical." She said, "What?" "Last month at the Defense Innovation Summit," David explained matter-of-factly. "She gave a presentation on why Steel Tech had pivoted entirely to electronic solutions. Your mechanical approach was specifically cited as a failed experimental pathway." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "When did she say this?" "She's been dismissing your work across the industry," Caldwell replied, his voice getting harder, claiming these designs were her early concepts that proved unfeasible during development testing. I stared at him. "She's been claiming my work as her failed ideas?" "I have the presentation slides," David said, pulling out his tablet. "She repeatedly used phrases like, 'my team's initial exploration' and 'my early designs' when referring to mechanical concepts that match your work exactly." Rain started hitting the windows as silence settled over us. I watched Madison watching from across the hall, her earlier confidence completely gone. "I built this company to solve problems," Caldwell said, "not to protect incompetent management." He handed me his card. "I've maintained my board position. We need to discuss your future." As they moved away, Madison finally approached. Her smooth confidence had cracked completely. "Mac, what the hell were you thinking? You violated every confidentiality clause in your contract today." "I didn't present company property," I replied calmly. "Every prototype here was built with foundation resources based on my original concepts. Your concepts were developed on company time. My concepts predate my employment," I cut in. "Check my military service records." These mechanical approaches were outlined in my discharge portfolio, which I specifically retained rights to in my employment agreement. A long pause. Then, "Preston's asking questions about your projects. What did you tell him?" "I didn't tell him anything. I showed him what's possible when innovation isn't being sabotaged." Her tone changed, becoming almost pleading. "Listen, Mac, I've always valued your experience. Maybe I was too focused on market demands, but we could integrate some of your ideas gradually. Please put in a good word with Preston. I thought of every dismissed concept, every interrupted presentation, every smashed prototype. I thought of her taking credit for my work as examples of what not to do. Some things can't be fixed once they're broken," I said quietly. "Trust is one of them." That hit her hard. She stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing with Carlos's name. "You need to get in here now," he said when I answered. "I'm still sick." Madison called an emergency meeting. "She's saying you stole company designs. She's preparing termination paperwork for intellectual property theft." That got my attention real quick. "That's impossible," I said. "Possible or not, she's doing it." Security seized your workstation this morning. I threw on clothes and drove to the office. The lobby buzzed with unusual weekend activity. The security guard looked up with recognition. Mr. Rodriguez, you're requested in the executive conference room immediately. I stepped into the elevator alone, mind racing. When the doors opened on the executive floor, another guard was waiting. Just you, please, he said, directing me down the hall. The conference room held more people than I'd expected. Preston Caldwell at the head of the table. To his right, David Kessler. To his left, our general counsel, Patricia Webb. At the far end, pale and tight-lipped, sat Madison. Mac, Preston said, thank you for coming. We have a situation that requires your input. I took the indicated chair, aware of every eye on me. There's some disagreement about the origin of the prototypes displayed yesterday, Preston continued. Madison has raised concerns about potential intellectual property violations. Madison leaned forward, a folder open before her. Mac's designs utilized proprietary mechanisms developed under company resources. The demonstration was unauthorized and represents a clear breach of contract. Preston turned to me. Would you care to respond? Every component in those prototypes was designed and built by me using foundation resources based on conceptual work I developed during military service. Work specifically excluded from my employment agreement. Patricia, our general counsel, glanced between us. This comes down to documentation and timing. When were these concepts first developed? What evidence supports each claim? I have my original discharge portfolio and design journals from the Army, I replied. They clearly outline the mechanical approach I've been refining. I can provide them immediately. Convenient, Madison said dismissively, but irrelevant. Any similar concepts were substantially transformed using company resources during your employment. The innovations demonstrated yesterday incorporated techniques developed by our senior engineering team. Preston's eyes narrowed. Which innovations specifically? The pressure adaptive response system, for one. That was developed in our automotive project last year. Interesting, David interjected, sliding his tablet toward the center. Because I've reviewed Mac's military service records from 4 years ago, the adaptive pressure system is clearly documented there, including field test results. Patricia took the tablet, scrolling with practiced efficiency. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. There's something else we should address, Preston said, turning to Madison. The presentation you gave at the Defense Summit last month. You specifically cited mechanical solutions as a failed approach that your team had explored and abandoned. Color drained from Madison's face. I was summarizing the company's strategic direction. You presented Mac's work as your own failed experiment, Preston corrected, his voice getting harder. You claimed to have personally determined that mechanical adaptations were insufficient for modern applications. I have the presentation slides and transcript, Patricia said, tapping her tablet. You repeatedly used phrases like, my team's exploration and my early designs when referring to mechanical concepts that match Mac's work. Silence fell as rain continued against the windows. Madison's expression shifted, calculation replacing defensiveness. There appears to be some miscommunication, she finally said, her voice regaining composure. In presentation environments, attribution sometimes gets simplified. My intent was never to claim, this wasn't one-time miscommunication, I said quietly. You've been systematically undermining my work for 18 months. Preston turned to me. Elaborate. From the beginning, Madison redirected resources away from my projects, excluded me from client meetings, and misrepresented my progress to leadership. When I completed the prototype, despite these obstacles, she physically destroyed it in front of our most important potential client. David nodded. I witnessed that destruction firsthand. These are serious allegations, Patricia noted. Do you have supporting evidence? Ask any engineer in the division about project reassignments. Examine resource allocation reports for the past 18 months. The pattern is documented. Madison's jaw tightened. This is absurd. We're allowing personal grievances to overshadow the fundamental issue of contract violation. Actually, Preston said, I believe we've uncovered something far more concerning. He turned to David. You mentioned the Foundation provided resources for Mac's recent work. Why? Because his approach solves critical problems for disabled veterans, David replied. The Foundation exists to support innovations that serve our community. After witnessing both Mac's vision and the company's apparent disinterest, I made a strategic decision to provide alternative development pathways. Preston nodded slowly, then turned to Madison. You were hired to expand our impact in veteran services, to identify and nurture innovations that align with our founding mission. Instead, you've actively suppressed exactly the work we should be championing. The market demands electronic solutions, Madison insisted. Investors expect— The market isn't homogeneous, Preston cut in, real anger breaking through his composed exterior. And this company wasn't built to chase quarterly returns. We solve problems that matter. I've heard enough, Preston finally said. Patricia, please prepare separation paperwork for Ms. Hayes. Madison's face went white. You can't be serious. Over one engineer's pet project? For creating a hostile work environment, misrepresenting company work to external parties, and deliberately undermining innovation that aligns with our core mission. As Madison was escorted out, silence settled over the room. Mac, Preston said eventually, I owe you an apology. This should have been addressed long ago. You couldn't have known. Moving forward, I'd like to establish a new division focused on mechanical automation technologies with you leading development. David has expressed interest in a formal partnership. David nodded. The prototypes you demonstrated yesterday received overwhelming interest. We've had 12 military procurement offices inquire about distribution programs. The opportunity was beyond anything I'd imagined possible. Yet I had to be careful. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I'd need complete autonomy over design direction and team composition, and transparent access to leadership when concerns arise. Preston and David exchanged glances. Those terms are entirely reasonable. Then yes, I said, I'd be honored to lead the division. Walking out of that building, I knew everything had changed. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, team building, and getting our new division off the ground. But the real test came when our first production units shipped to military bases in 45 countries. The feedback transformed abstract metrics into human impact. Veterans maintaining independence with reliable equipment. Remote facilities operating efficiently without power infrastructure concerns. Communities developing local maintenance expertise that created economic opportunities. Madison found a position with a competitor, though industry whispers suggested her reputation had suffered lasting damage. Preston remained actively involved in our division, his original passion for problem-solving reignited by our success. As for me, I found something unexpected after that confrontation. Not just professional validation, but a profound sense of purpose fulfilled. The systems we created weren't just products, they were possibilities, expanding what was accessible to people who had served their country. Sometimes the most effective response to being undermined isn't destruction, it's creation. Building something so undeniably valuable that those who tried to diminish you must confront their own limitations. Success that speaks for itself needs no additional vindication.